Oh, there's Emma. Hi, Emma. Oh, she probably can't hear me yet.
She's connecting on the audio.
Keith, I like your hair.
Thank you. It's growing a little bit out of control. I did my best.
I like it. Like the back of it looks cool.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have the whole team here. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, Jimmy just joined.
Monica, is it open for attendees yet? Or when does that open?
Yep, it's already open.
Oh, okay.
Yep, as soon as we went live.
Gotcha.
Okay, so we'll just give a couple of minutes to.
Yep. We'll get started at 4:57, Keith.
Yep. Okay. And Monica, do you have the link to this event for participants? One of my friends, he registered, but he didn't get the link. The link is not working.
Let's see. Bear with me, I'm trying to get it for you, Keith.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we're going to start at 4:57 without attendees in case.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. All right, welcome everyone. Happy Thursday. I hope everything's well with you and your loved ones are safe. First of all, my name is Keith Kim. I'm the Director of Diversity and Inclusion for the FPA of Georgia. Wanted to take a brief moment to thank everyone for joining before the official introduction by Kristen, our chapter president. And this is the second fireside chat we've hosted, and the last one was just around this time. Last year. And today we again have some awesome speakers from different states joining us, and they serve different communities. And I hope you guys enjoy and feel more connected. Kristen?
Thank you so much, Keith. I am really, really excited about tonight. We've got a stellar lineup of panelists as well as a great moderator, and we're going to talk through some really good information. And so before we get started, really a big thank you to our sponsors. We really can't put on any kind of events or any kind of programming without their support they've given, as well, of course, as our dues that we pay. And so with that said, really quickly, I just wanted to introduce one of our sponsors this year, Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta, Allison O'Carroll. She's going to talk to us a little bit about what they do.
Great. Thank you very much, Kristen. We are just thrilled to be a sponsor of the Financial Planning Association of Georgia. As our name indicates, Community Foundation, we serve as a philanthropic resource and a well of support for the entire community. And I liken it to an endowment that a university has, but in that case, it's really just benefiting one little group. But we're an endowment for the community, benefiting everybody. But clearly, we need the help of donors to do that. That's kind of obvious, but maybe not so obvious is the critical role that everyone on this call, on this meeting plays as advisors to these donors or your clients. You can really play a role in helping them think through what philanthropy they might want to do in their own community and encourage them to do so if they are in a financial position to do that. So if you ever have any questions about the Community Foundation or charitable gift planning, or if you have clients who are interested in knowing more, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm the Director and Philanthropic Counsel for the Community Foundation, and I work most closely with our professional advisors. And so I'm the one to contact. Today's session is on diversity and inclusion. A closely related concept to that is equity. And for years now, equity of opportunity has been a particular focus for the Community Foundation. And just recently in our new strategic planning process, we're really doubling down on that. Equity of opportunity and shared prosperity is really at the heart of what we're all about at the Community Foundation. So I'll leave you with that thought, and we have a short video that we wanted to share with you that expounds or explains a little bit more about that. But I look forward to hopefully working with all of you in the future on some gifts from your clients.
The time is now to join together to make our region more equitable for all. The place we call home is the worst in the nation for income inequality.
At the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta, it's our job as Atlanta's philanthropic first responder to enlist community support to tackle this issue head on.
We undertake this effort now because if not us, then who?
We inspire philanthropy, acting as the mortar to connect generous funders and donors with our region's greatest needs.
Why now? Talent's everywhere, but opportunity is not.
Race is deeply tied to systemic and institutional biases here in Atlanta.
We live in a community where there is a 10-year difference in life expectancy for children born 2 miles apart in different zip codes.
We are one of the most racially segregated regions in the country, resulting in poor outcomes for many of our Black, immigrant, and Latino communities.
Inequity in Atlanta is woven through the history of our city. And work for equity of opportunity is, at its core, work for racial equity.
There are institutions and systems in our society, like public education structures, housing, geography, and criminal justice, that help to create and perpetuate inequity.
So to ensure that everyone has equal access and opportunity, we must look at fixing these systems.
We're about ensuring that everyone experiences prosperity through lasting long-term change.
It isn't a quick fix, and it will require partnership with our donors, civic leaders, and other institutions to expand opportunity in neighborhoods across the region.
As Atlanta's home for philanthropy, we aim to push this initiative forward now because it simply cannot wait.
And with your help, we will create a more equitable future for every person who calls Atlanta home.
Thank you so much, Allison, for delivering that message. With that said, I'd like to like to also just take a moment just to recognize our other sponsor for tonight's event, Vanguard. They've been a really great champion for what we do at FPA nationally, as well as our local chapter. Okay, so without further ado, wanted to take a moment to introduce our illustrious group of people we have here. First of all, my twin, Todd. Hi, Todd.
Hello,
We did not plan this. Hey. And first, let me just take a step back and say all of our members here today are on this panel, and our moderator are all CFPs, Certified Financial Planners. We've got some people that have other initials next to their names as well, but wanted to just quickly just introduce these individuals. Todd, who will be moderating our panel, is an Associate Wealth Advisor at Mariner Wealth. Jim Morocco, he's a CFP, of course, and Financial Advisor at Thinking Big Financial. Rita Chang, Chief Executive Officer at Blue Ocean Global Wealth. Luis Rosa, founder of Build a Better Financial Future. Emma Folks, Managing Partner at Greenwood Wealth Management. Leanne Miko, founder of Equalis Financial. And with that said, and just a moment, I didn't want to go through everybody's bio because I really want us to devote as much time as we can to tonight's panel because it's going to be really good information for everybody. So with that said, take it away, Todd, and thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you, Kristen. Good afternoon to everybody, and welcome again to our Fireside Chat. As Kristen mentioned, we have a very ambitious agenda we want to tackle this afternoon. So I'm going to hop right into it for a question for everybody. And we're going to kick this off with Leanne if we can. So as you all think about your career, why are you so passionate about this topic and believe it was worth your time to participate in this conversation today?
That's a great question. I think that we all have a unique experience that is oftentimes shared with others. Related to wealth or the lack thereof. And my perspective, right, representation is a vital component to balancing the financial playing field. I would say that many of my clients come from a similarly financial insecure background as I do. And so whether it's due to their sexual orientation, their gender, their race, whatever it may be, and they've long avoided seeking help due to fear of shame or judgment. And so without fail, every person who reaches out to me does so because my story resonates with them. So having that courage, they reach out saying, someone has gone through this or has experienced something that I've experienced, which isn't as common, right, for what we consider the typical financial advisor in the industry. And so I think as an advisor or as an industry, right, we have to recognize that it's not a one size fits all need or solution. And so we need to acknowledge and highlight our differences and bring more folks to the table, be it on the advisor side or the client side, so we can start to make real change in economic inequality.
Thank you. Luis, what would you say?
Thank you, Todd. Yeah, Leanne, thank you for sharing that. I agree with that a lot too. I think about my own background. And just looking at a lot of the people that come from similar background to me as an immigrant that are really underserved, because traditionally a lot of the financial planning that gets done ultimately is after somebody starts a relationship with like an investment manager.
Mhm.
And in my case, like there's a lot of my peers that didn't have assets to invest, right? And then they just didn't get the advice at all, and it was just forgone. And a lot of people were not sure of how to reach out or how to even get it, right? And so it's about economic empowerment for me, you know, both on the advisor side and also the client side. I think shared experiences create trust, and to be able to see somebody that has gone through something similar to what you've gone through initially creates that bond to allow you to then open up and then share your money story. And it's important for an advisor that has at least be able to share or understand what some people have gone through, because like Leanne was saying, that the textbook is not going to apply all the time. It's not a one fits all solution. People come with different values, different backgrounds, different fears, and you have to be in a situation where you can understand that and then help them along the way, you know. So closing the wealth gap as well is really important. Coming from my background, I just experienced where people just didn't leave things to move the next generation forward. And that's one thing that I feel like it's important. The more advisors we get into the profession, the more and more people we can help elevate.
Awesome. How about you, Rita?
Sure. I mean, everything that Leanne and Louis said resonated with me. For me, I wanted to be here. This is so important. It's my mommy's 75th birthday. But I told her, I ordered the food. I said, this is very important to me, mommy. She's like, okay, why is this important? I think about awareness and access, awareness of what financial planning can do, and access. You know, I am on a mission and I will not leave this earth because I want people to know that financial planning transforms lives. My story is I'm the first one in my family to go to college. My dad came to America with $17. I don't care what inflation is. That's not a lot of money. And so I know that it is important to engage in these conversations because personal finance is well personal. We have unique experiences, values, and by sharing these connections, we can facilitate conversation. And that is when we can help bridge the wealth gap. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you so much. What would you say, Jim?
Yeah, you know, what comes to mind is also my own personal experience. And I think I draw back on what it felt like for me as a gay man to be in my prior career in finance, and how just with a lack of comfort I constantly felt a little bit of discomfort, everything I did. And so when I thought about, okay, when I want to go into this financial planning field, and when I change careers, how can I do that in a way that actually opens the doors to people who may have, backgrounds similar to myself or may feel the same things. Money is such a intimate, complex, personal thing that we need to feel comfortable who we're working with, right? And so I wanted to really provide an environment, and I think the more that we all as a profession can open our arms to that and be more welcoming to different people's experiences, and even down to the nitty-gritty of different planning that is required for different people's experience versus it being a very sort of cookie cutter approach, really just sends a much more welcoming and empowering, as others have said, message to people. And so in a nutshell, I think that's what what makes me feel so passionate about it.
Thank you. Can you round us out, Emma?
I think I can. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, we got you.
So yes, I definitely think, so for me, it was important. I think I can relate to everyone, all of the panelists, because I'm half Costa Rican, half Haitian, I'm female, I'm LGBTQ. So for me, thinking about how I was raised and the mental constraints that my family didn't have about equality in this country, I saw my family who had sold everything they had to come to this country to take advantage of it, and they were able to take advantage of it. And so for me, there was always a disconnect between people who look like me in this country and my family, only to realize that the difference is because, you know, no one told them that they couldn't do certain things. So for me, it was just about how can I empower other people that look like me, that have the same experiences that I have, and take off some of those mental shackles.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. So we have 5 key questions we want to hit in this time, and I'm going to start this off with you, Rita. So after getting into the financial services industry, did any aspect about the profession surprise you in regards to diversity inclusion once you got inside?
Sure. So, I mean, what's interesting about me is it's a little bit cliche, but it's true. I'm actually not intimidated by math. Like, I started out in the engineering track, so I wasn't scared of that. But when I entered the profession, I didn't see anybody who looked like me. Now, I think that more concerned others than me because they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't see anybody who looked like me. So therefore, they didn't think I could be successful. That was a little bit shocking. And then I was criticized for being too quiet, too analytic. I mean, I don't have analysis paralysis, but I'm thorough. And someone said this to me, they're like, Margarita, you know, you're a lousy financial planner. Your whole problem, this is direct quote, you spend too much time asking questions in relationship building. You might want to rethink this. And so that's what was shocking to me. I thought this was about solving people's problems. But
how
I
can you solve the
realized
problems if you can't hear the client?
exactly.
Right?
So that was shocking. So that was a little bit disappointing because it seemed so transactional. And the way to close out this question is I realized that that manager could be right and I could be right. We were both right at the same time. For the type of business he wanted to run, that made sense. But for the type of relationships I want to have and the impact I want to have on this world, I was right. So we both could be right.
Excellent. Excellent. Anybody else want to chime in on this question about your experiences once you got in the field?
Yeah, I think I would echo a lot of what Rita just said. Like, there was definitely a part of me coming into the business as a career changer, right? So I didn't grow up in the industry, so I didn't know anything about it. And to Rita's point, I thought it was mostly transactional, and I thought it was mostly a sales type business. And I didn't know we could have those types of relationships with clients in that way. That is really, truly getting to know the client, truly getting to understand their situation. And, it was both surprising to me that I couldn't figure that out going in, and also heartening that I found a community within the larger community that does focus on that. I'd say from a sort of diversity perspective, one of the things that perhaps surprised me, perhaps didn't, depending on, how cynical maybe I was feeling. When I went in, I said, well, how many businesses out there, how many advisors out there are LGBTQ focused? I was just curious. I think I found 2 at the time, and that were visible, right? That doesn't mean that there weren't more out there, but it was just so difficult to actually find someone or a company that was, working with the community. And so to me, that was also a light bulb moment in terms of coming into the business.
Tim, are you talking about you were trying to find a firm that specifically catered to the LGBT community? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that specifically catered to, or, was truly working with, or an advisor who was, specializing in work with, in a way that was more than, there's a flag on the, on the website, and that makes it, LGBTQ friendly
on the window, right?
Exactly. And so that was really surprising to me.
Awesome. Thank you. Emma, did you want to comment?
Yeah, when I started, it was, back in 2001, and that was kind of like my second iteration in the profession. I think my first go around was in 1994, 1995. But when I had just kind of moved here to Atlanta, I think I'd been here about 2 years, so I was still trying to get adjusted to leaving Orange County, California, and moving here to Atlanta. And there were a lot of things that were very shocking to me. So what shocked me about the industry, and I don't know if it's a Southern thing or if it's the industry thing, but I found it to be very kind of tribal. If you didn't go to the schools they went to, if they couldn't relate to you, they weren't willing to even get to understand, who you are or about your family. Like, I was kind of cast aside because of the color of my skin. No one asked me where I lived. No one asked me anything about my family. They just made assumptions that I didn't know people, that could afford our services and things like that. So it was very disheartening for me. And so for me, I think I survived despite a lot of the, a lot of the aspects of just being dismissed in the industry.
Got you. Thank you. Thank you. So for the second question, and we will start with Emma on this question. As you reflect back upon your career, how did you overcome some of those hidden systemic barriers that usually are in place when somebody tries to enter the profession?
So again, it's kind of a twofold answer to that one. One, when I started, they used to offer something called a draw. So they'd pay you like $1,000 a month or every other week, and your commissions would come out of that. So that kind of helped, a little bit to pay for my son's private school. I had money saved, and then I also come from a family that won't let me fail. So I had kind of, a safety net if things didn't go the way they were supposed to. So I was able to take, kind of more chances than the regular person.
Can anybody else respond to that? Because, some people don't have that safety net. And, how do you press through those early entry barriers? Maybe Luis?
Yeah, Todd, in my case was like Jim was saying before, it was the community. Once I learned that there was like a community within the industry, that was really eye-opening for me. Like FPA Next Gen, for example, when I went to the conference, it was just amazing. Like the energy, the people that were there, it was really not looked at as competition. Everybody was really there to learn and help each other out. And that really helped me a lot with a lot of the hidden barriers to entry, because there were things that I just didn't know that I didn't know. So when I learned about including financial planning in an aspect of being like, say, being the leading thing in the relationship with the client, I came up from the broker dealer world, and it was just, commission-based stuff. And it was over a decade before I even realized that there were other avenues where you could actually work with people that was not transactional. And to me, it was like, what? You can open your own RIA? No way.
Yeah.
So that was very eye-opening, but I got that a lot from the community. So that was really cool. And, I've made some great friendships from those conferences, like I met Rita online, and then we finally met there in person, and it just blossomed from there. So that really has helped me a lot in the community, just knowing that there are other people that care and that want to push this forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. It took me a while to realize that there's the investment side, which is what most people have in mind and think when they think about our profession, but actually financial planning is so much more than investments and incorporates other areas. And I think that's kind of where we're moving to. What would you say about this, Leanne? Any comments about breaking barriers to entry?
I think I've been very fortunate in that I am straight passing. And so being a queer woman and having that straight passing ability, right, has given me the space to navigate conversations and interactions safely. And again, I reiterate, I'm very fortunate to have that be the case. But, I've had to downplay or hide my queer identity pretty much my entire career, and I still do. Until you get a vibe for someone and understand kind of who they are, what they're about. I kind of keep my cards close to the chest until I can assess whether it's a safe space or not. But having grown up and started my firm and been in LA my entire life, that lends itself to being a more progressive environment where you are more likely to interact with people who are a little bit more open-minded. I would say I'm incredibly grateful for that, because I couldn't imagine what it would be like to live in a small conservative town, to be a queer person, and having to really wonder what that person is thinking of you, whether your partner is secretly your sister, you know, or you're, you know, because you can't really put yourself out there like that. So I think, you know, the phrase that always comes to mind is fake it till you make it. And to some extent, right, you can do that. There are certainly instances in which that doesn't work. But that was like the number one advice, number one way I was able to kind of power through some of those perceived barriers and get through to where I am now.
But the interesting thing is, do you still feel that way today after 2015 and the passage of marriage equality and things of that nature? Do you still feel that need in this point in your career?
I do. I am much more open with who I am. I did a rebrand of my company last year, and now, I mean, it's plastered everywhere. There's no secret. There is no misunderstanding who I am, what I am, the community I'm a member of. But I still, on a one-on-one interaction or group interactions with people I'm not familiar with, I still have to walk that line finely. And I hate to say it, but it's mostly with men more than it is women. And that is a whole other different ball game, right? And so, yeah, I mean, last year I went to a conference and I wasn't then married or engaged, but I had to buy a ring to put on my finger to avoid some of the discomfort and having people ask questions about my sexuality, right? Because the assumption is that there's a ring on the finger, you're married to a man. And so I would just let people believe that rather than having to field really uncomfortable questions about being queer. So yeah, unfortunately, it is still a thing. I would say maybe not as much as it has been in the past, but it still very much feels relevant.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that. How about you, Jim? Anything to say? Jim?
Sorry, was that for me? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I think similarly to Leanne, like I was fortunate in that, you know, when I came into the business, I had a partner and I had savings. And so I had a support system that I could really, that allowed me to make the move, right? So that was clearly something, but I do think that we all, you know, where my mind goes is that I'm thinking about all the interactions I have with people that reach out to me that would like to work with me. And oftentimes what I hear from them is, we reach out to you because we know this is safe space. Or oftentimes what I hear, people may not be in the community, but are still reaching out because they view it as a sort of signal that there's a similar progressive mindset. You know, I don't want to be, you know, working with an advisor, with a planner that's, you know, not going to understand my life or not going to have a clue about who I am. And so, you know, I think I'm getting a little off topic here, but I do think that a lot of that still exists and people want that comfort. So for me, you know, again, similar to what Leanne said, like I can pass as straight cis man, right? Like, and that was something that can easily, you know, no one would know the difference, right? But at the same time, I think it's important for me to kind of push myself and hang and, you know, let people know who I am, so that it does kind of offer this sort of welcoming environment that it's okay. I think the other barrier that's there too is, again, I'm thinking of bringing this back to working with the LGBTQ community specifically, but I think this is analogous to other situations too, where the business in many ways, like you were saying, is about, you know, everybody thinks it's about investing, right? But I think about the work that I do with some clients, for LGBTQ clients, there's a lot of planning, right? If you're growing a family, that is incredibly complex to do as a queer family, right? And that requires a lot of planning. And there are plenty of people that want help with that. And so those are the types, I think those are the other barriers that exist, that there is this sort of huge need, but there's this sort of like, but that's not what the business does. And so I think the more that we can say, no, we're planning first, right? Like, I think Luis was saying, like, planning is the main offering, right? Investing is just a part of that. The more we can do that, I think also helps to further our goal of being more inclusive.
Well, I can imagine that was probably even more of a specialty and something you really had to delicately delve into before 2015, when the laws weren't as favorable versus as they are now with equality.
Yeah, yeah. And I think marriage equality, is just one aspect of working within the LGBTQ community, right? Like family planning is a big part of it. Like, having been through the process myself, I have a baby. I was like, oh my gosh, this is really difficult and really hard to understand. And like, just like having gone through that, I now know what others who have no help must be trying to figure out, right? And there's, we're just kind of scratching the surface on some of these things. But yeah, I think under the umbrella, there's just like a lot of different types of planning that we can do.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we move on, Rita, did you want to say anything?
So the question is like success and how and the barriers, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, breaking through the barriers in the beginning when you first came.
Sure. When I first came through, I think that sometimes one of the hardest things for me was being mindful of cultural nuances. And I had to make sure that I navigated that carefully. So one of the barriers that I had to overcome is make a list of friends and family who I was going to call. And I didn't fill out the list. And my sales manager asked me about the list. I'm like, there is no list. I have 2 kids under 3. I don't have any friends. I'm not a loser. He's like, what about your parents? I'm like, that's not going to work. My dad lives in Taiwan, and East Asians, they're private. So he's like, well, how are you going to grow your business? And I'm like, well, I'm going to make cold calls. I don't think that man took me seriously. But to be honest, the first year I acquired 33 clients, 31 were strangers, 32 was my girlfriend from a previous job, and 33 was my dad. So some of the barriers I had to overcome were people's biases of what a successful advisor looks like or should sound like. It was so hard for people to think that this Margarita Maria Chang could be successful. Like, she doesn't go to happy hour, she doesn't understand American football. Like, how could this woman with these 2 little babies be successful? But what they didn't know is I know how to talk to people. So that is how I overcame. And I'm going to share 2 C's with you. Collaboration. It's not competition, but it's collaboration. I also had people in my office, and I'm a little bit fearful that people may not feel comfortable helping people. They happen to be 2 older white men, and they helped me, and it wasn't perverse or weird. Like, we went to the same university. They were older than me. But people like to help people. When I became successful, I publicly thanked them, because even though I acquired all my own clients, they took the time to tell me, hey, you got to join FPA. Hey, Rita, it's hard for you to network, but why don't you start to write? I know you can't go out at night with your kids, but don't let that be a barrier. So if there's anything I want people to take away, is it's the power of collaboration, not competition.
Thank you so much. Coming from the African-American community, I definitely know what you're saying about that, because when I first thought the industry was about selling and products and I don't have a robust network either, or my family, we weren't part of country clubs and things of that nature to pull from for business. So it's like, well, how can I really do this? And it took me a while to find out there was another way. So I can completely relate to that. So the next question, I'm going to start with Jim on this one. This is a big one that's kind of been on my mind. We often hear the terms diversity and inclusion lumped together as if they're one group. In your professional opinion, are these 2 terms the same, and do they have similar or competing agendas? What say you, Jim?
Yeah, the way I think about it is diversity as more of a descriptive term, and inclusion as being more action oriented. And so to me, when I think about them, I think about, as a profession, we can become more diverse. We can check the boxes, so to speak. But then where my mind goes is, but then how are we actually, sort of doing that? And again, I know I keep going back to this, but when we think about just like the core work of the planning, right? And we think about what we're all talking about here, about how the business makes us think about investing only. and not about any of the other planning. Like, that is not very inclusive. And so when we think about planning, and even when we're talking about planning, the type of planning we're talking about, I think as a profession needs to be more inclusive, and that will bring more of the different, will bring more diversity within the planning type, work, and will be more accessible to people. But when we think about things, the one thing that came to mind, and I know that people often talk about this, is like how to advise on student loans, right? There's not really much, in the curriculum about that, right? There's a little bit. And yet that's not very helpful for many people, right? And so when we think about how that is not furthering a goal of inclusivity, I kind of think about it in those terms when I'm thinking very, sort of about the financial planning profession, in terms of the content that we're putting out there, in terms of the audiences that we're addressing and the planning topics we're thinking about it. I just feel like we can do a better job to raise more awareness of those issues, and that in one way will help with inclusivity, be a little bit more action oriented. I think one thing I always try to do, in my own small way, is to just raise awareness for some of these things that, for my clients or for the people that are on my newsletter, just keeping people aware of whatever it might be, and raising awareness of it, rather than it being so sort of, kind of tunnel vision about one thing, especially in our profession, about investing or about what the markets are doing or whatever. I think for me, that's kind of how I've taken that charge of being a little bit more action oriented to it. So I'd say that's maybe one way to, I think about it.
Thank you. How about you, Emma? Do you feel, how do you define diversity and inclusion, and are they competing forces, similar, or complementary?
Man, if you asked me this last year, my answer would have been different. So I'm a little jaded after the past year. To me, diversity is one of those words that corporations have to deal with. I'm 52 years old, so I've been through several iterations of humans in corporate America behaving better, trying to behave better. So we went through the sexual harassment thing. We went through, I forgot what the other, LGBTQ thing. And now we're going through the diversity thing. So everyone wants to get diverse hires. But now it's, where are those diverse hires placed? The inclusivity to me is those diverse hires and everyone equally that's qualified, that has the ability to make decisions. And to Jim's point, it's almost like inclusion is the action, the action word. Who are you allowing at the table to make decisions about the organization as a whole? I don't know that they're competing. I don't think they're competing, but I think they are kind of like, if then whatever type of thing. I think you have to have one and then the other.
Gotcha. Luis, what do you think?
Yeah, I think they're complementary, but you could have one without the other. You could be a diverse firm, but not really be inclusive. Like Emma was saying, I mean, you could have a paraplanner that's diverse, but not ask them for their input in a client meeting, for example, and not have their voice be heard, right? So you check the box. Yeah, we have diverse hires. We have photos of diverse people on our website. But what about clients, for example? Let's say you do have diverse photos of people on your website, the stock photos, but can they even afford your services? Is there somebody in your firm that works with people that need student loan help? Or is it more like, hey, we only speak to you if you have $500,000 or more, right? So I think the diversity word sometimes is used as a crutch to then just, like Jim was saying, like just put the flag on the website, right? And or in the window, and like, okay, we check this box, we support you, we're here. But the inclusion part is really what has the action behind it. So they're complementary to each other, but you could have diversity without inclusion for sure.
Rita, what do you think?
Sure. I mean, like Luis said, they're complementary. I think, here's my view of the world. I think all too often people focus on diversity, and it's important. But if we are inclusive and we actually practice conscious inclusion, we will be able to have a more sustainable community, not just our team, but the people we serve. So here is something, because I always like to provide clear, concise advice. Instead of counting people, I think it's really important to let people know they count. So whether you're a paraplanner, whether you're a committee member of FPA, you don't have to implement everybody's suggestion, but at least take the time to let them express themselves. Their voices, their opinion, and their experiences matter. So that's kind of what I think about diversity and inclusion.
Absolutely, absolutely. Leanne, was there anything you wanted to chime in on this question?
Yeah, I echo pretty much everything everyone else has said. I do think they aren't the same, but they do go together. Having a diverse workforce is absolutely useless if the company doesn't acknowledge or respect different perspectives. It just becomes tokenism, right? Like everyone's saying, you've got pictures, you've got these people, and you flash them on there, but are you actually listening to them? Are you valuing them? Are you validating and incorporating their thoughts, opinions, feelings into your discussions? If not, you're just in that same mind frame of groupthink, right? Homogenous, we make decisions, this is how we do it, and this is the only way we do it. Cool, you have an opinion, but it doesn't really matter. Yeah. I think that creates a sense of belonging when everyone is brought to the table and given, time, to voice their opinions and thoughts. And I think as advisors, that helps us to think outside of the box, because decisions from a planning perspective are not binary. There is no this or that, right? There's always multiple layers to a decision. And so having the ability to think creatively around those decisions and how to incorporate things is incredibly helpful. The one thing I stress to my clients is no decision is ever going to be made based on one factor, right? There's so many more things to it. And when you have multiple perspectives helping to inform those decisions, you end up helping your clients more than you even realize by giving them various options that maybe aren't traditional in a sense.
And I think we can all agree that, if we find ourselves at a firm like that or an environment like that, it's probably going to be very hard to feel welcome and be successful. And that's probably a place you probably want to get out pretty quick. Yeah. So Louise, let's tackle this next question. So in this country, 2020 and 2021 have been rough years in terms of race relations and racial mass shootings. What changes do you see emerging in our profession as it pertains to diversity and inclusion? And are these changes happening quickly enough?
I think people and companies are paying more attention. I have a shameless plug, but like one of the things initiative that I started with some colleagues of mine last year was a BLX internship program, which is designed to help with some of those barriers to entry that we were talking about. So trying to get students and career changes from Black and Latinx backgrounds into meaningful paid internships throughout the summer. This was our first year. And the support that we got from participating firms and also from just the community at large in the financial planning world, it was amazing. We got over 36 interns placed this summer, and some of which already got job offerings to be permanent or an extension of that internship. That, we've gotten so many emails that they were like, we would have never had this opportunity had it not been for this program, because a lot of the things that I hear from companies, there's always some sort of lack of talent. They don't know where to go for the pipeline.
Yeah.
And I think people are paying attention. And I don't know if it's fast enough. Hopefully it's not a phase, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that it's just going to continue to grow from here.
Well, I think too, we didn't get into this problem overnight, so we're probably not going to fix it overnight either. But I guess we just want to see progress, right?
Definitely.
Let's go back to you, Leanne. Anything on the climate of the country the past couple of years and the impact?
Yeah, I mean, it's, these incidents aren't new. They're just more visible now. They're things that have always been happening. We just have more access to the information. I think there seems to be more willingness for companies to, less willingness for companies to sweep these incidents under the rug, whether that is because they're fearful of their reputation being tarnished or they truly don't want to be affiliated with that person anymore. I might have a slightly cynical view of it, but they're taking action nonetheless, and they're getting rid of, the LPL recent hubbub in the news, right? That's one example of just cutting it off. so they're taking quicker action. And it's funny, in my notes, I'd written something, Luis, about the BLX internship, with that now being the case and it being an opportunity for firms and interns, this excuse of there's no diverse candidates in the pipeline, which you hear frequently, that's not really the case anymore. And it's being proven that there are opportunities to find diverse talent. You're just not looking in the right places because you're sticking with your golf buddies who look exactly like you, do the same thing you do. And that's where you're sourcing your people from. And so I'm hoping that having those resources and these things available to them now, that they'll start looking, outside of the traditional paths for recruiting and opening things up. But whether it's happening fast enough in a serious manner, I think on a surface level, sure, there's action, but deep below, I'm not so confident.
What's your thoughts, Jim?
Yeah, I think my purview over the industry isn't probably large enough to have a terrific or articulated sense, but I would echo a lot of what I've heard here. I think we certainly see and hear a lot more push, right, for it. And I think getting the conversations going is great, right? And I feel like we also have to take a next step of, thinking and helping people to think like, okay, what on your, at your business or in your company, what can you do at the micro level to really help this cause, right? And to really make the profession more representative of what the population is like and more inclusive. And so, I'd like to think that we're getting a little bit more of that. And I guess I'd probably agree with Leanne. It's probably also not happening fast enough, but it seems to be that there is a little bit more movement and it's a little bit stickier.
I totally agree. And that's kind of how I measure myself as well, as am I doing what I can impact and what I can control now? Because that's really all I can touch now. And if I'm doing my part and just believe that, groups like us are going to grow and we're going to keep on making impact, especially with the next group of professionals that enter our profession. Emma, what would you say about this?
Again, slightly jaded, right? So for me, it's this question of, is it, I see more color, I see more diversity, but I don't know necessarily that it's because of the activities of, kind of the bigger firms, the bigger outfits, as much as it is people like myself starting their own thing. I've been in the business now 20 years, so I can bring on all the diverse candidates that I want. Matter of fact, I don't have to think about it, right? So I think what's helping is the people that weren't included in the decision-making saying, you know what, I don't need your table, build my own. Hey, you want to come along and be treated like a human, and, to what Rita was saying, follow the golden rule with these people and watch how they just blossom. So I think it may be a combination of both. We're seeing an influx of it now because, it's the in thing to do. But I think we're so far behind the mark. We're still so far behind the mark. But, I love what I'm seeing. I love what I'm seeing. And I like the fact that the younger generation is just not going to settle for the things that my generation settled for.
Well, I think you bring a unique perspective, Emma, because you definitely can tell us how it's been over time since the 90s, early 2000s to now. So thank you for that. Rita, you want to round us out on this question?
Sure. I know it is not happening fast enough because today the results of the 2020 census come out, but I am definitely going to be hopeful and optimistic. This past year has been challenging. I'm multiracial, multicultural. And when I think about STOP, AAP, I hate, right? I told you today is my mommy's birthday. My mommy's white. And when I had to explain to her that I don't feel safe running outside because people are getting attacked, my mom didn't understand. And I had to explain to her. You might say, Margarita, how is this relevant? It's a sad day when I can't even run outside and I have to run a lot of miles and I have to run on a treadmill, that's another conversation for another day. But I am positively and hopeful and optimistic. I think that people do want to do better. And sometimes it can be very exhausting for those of us who are from an underrepresented community, because we feel the need to educate others. And I understand it's not our job, or we may think that's not our responsibility. They should learn about it. But I'm of the mindset, if someone has an open heart and open mind and they're asking me and they want to help, I'm going to direct them to resources so that they can do better and make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of like, I guess when you talk about youth, you never know, people may learn and watch you, then you're not even aware that they're watching you, but they're learning, they're getting a message, whether they acknowledge you or not. And it's kind of like we say that with youth watching us growing up. So, but then to your point, Rita, about being proactive when we have the opportunity, that's important too. So let's round this out. The last question, Leanne, starting with you. What can industry organizations like the FPA and we as individuals, what can we do to help move along progress in terms of diversity and inclusion? What do you think we can do? And what the FPA can do and other organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that came to mind when I was thinking of what FPA can do is having more diversity in their speakers. There's lots of conferences and events, local, regional events, having more diversity in the speakers, but not having them speak on D&I, having them speak in their respective expertise, right? Representation. You may have that young advisor showing up for the first time to the meeting. They're like, yeah, like I see that person. Like that's what I aspire to be. But if you're just surrounded by a bunch of the same old white-haired white guys,
yeah,
it's not a welcoming environment, And so I think creating more opportunities to that extent it's crucial. Like looking outside of your typical network of who you'd go to speak on this and finding someone different this year is huge. And I think creating an environment where everyone feels safe, contributing and sharing their perspective is huge, just like in a workplace, right? Creating, the forums and the get-togethers and the meetings, really honoring people's identities and differences, is a great first step or further step in getting there.
Absolutely. What would you say, Jim?
Yeah, no, I would just kind of echo a lot of what Leanne is saying. I think it's about creating an environment where we are just kind of opening everyone's minds to all of the different perspectives, types of planning that are out there, types of situation, types of families, individuals, types of careers. I think I see this a little bit through my own work through one of the knowledge circles at FPA, Pride Planners, right? Where our goal is really about just trying to get content out there so that people know that these things exist. They know that these topics are important or they're complex or, and I think it's also, and a lot about the communication too, right? And it's about how the content is structured, to your point about like simple things like, do we use pronouns? Are we talking, when we use examples, what are the examples that that we're using? Are they of the stereotypical, husband and wife who are wealthy? Or are they about a younger couple that is, whatever, fill in the blank? So I feel like that is really how FPA can help just getting more, putting word out there about it and just kind of having presence about it and getting that out to everybody.
Rita, what do you think that these organizations that we can do that advance the cause?
Sure. So I would say, let's just like let me answer diversity in speakers, diversity in topics. I would say that's for FPA, but what individuals can do is they can open their networks. I didn't have a network and I was blessed that someone did open their network for me. Inviting people to serve on committees with you. Don't just put someone out there to figure it out on their own, but guide them. This is so good for our association as well as our profession because we're putting succession planning in place. So I think that is going to be critical to be able to, because we're basically creating more opportunities within the profession. And last but not least, I just wanted to play off what Jim said. You know, I teach ethics for CFP board. And what I did is I rewrote every case to use the proper pronouns and make sure that we had different scenarios. So, because I think that's really important. One may think it's a small thing, but it is the small things that matter.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think representation and image is important. Luis, what would you say?
Yeah, I think the communication and education piece is very important. I find that there's a lot of people who are not underrepresented that want to help and they don't know how, right? And I think providing some sort of education or community, right, where say, this is how you can help and get involved. Because I find a lot of the times with diversity and inclusion, the people that find it are the ones looking for it. So often when you join a diversity panel, it's usually underrepresented people who are the speakers and the members of the audience, right? So I think there's a lot of power in the fact that there's a lot of people out there that are good-hearted that just want to help, like Rita was saying. And so just helping them help the cause, right? It's because they might not know what they don't know. And now it's like, hey, listen, here's some training. Here's other ways that you can do. Like when Leanne was saying about the hiring methods, it just spoke to me because we hear so many times where people get interns just because they were golfing with a client or another, you know, so it's like the pipeline, yeah, of course it's not there because you're using the same methods as before. You're not really intentionally going out there to get it. So just educating and having that communication saying, here's how you can be an ally. Here's how you can do, you know, the work that needs to be done because we can't do it all ourselves. You know, I think it's also a tax sometimes to be the one that's underrepresented and then also have to teach others how to help at the same time. And we don't have all the answers either, you know?
That's kind of funny how you say that, Luis. I guess I never thought of it that way. And I guess maybe the majority needs to be more, participants versus the minority always being the panelists, the audience. Maybe we need other thoughts. So that's a good point. So Emma, can you round us out on this question?
Sure can. I sure can. So I'm a subject matter expert. I've written exam questions for the CFP board, but we also, one of the things I can say which makes me proud of the CFP board is that they have a commitment to inclusion because they had us, the last set that I had to go through was basically looking at the exam questions to make sure the pronouns were inclusive. They wanted to make sure there wasn't any stereotypes for wealth or that if a person that was in the Bronx took the exam, they wouldn't feel out of place because there were questions about the country club and assumptions about wealth. So that makes me feel really good. As far as the FPA is concerned, you know, whether it's the FPA, the CFP board, but anybody that believes in planning, they're going to have to lobby harder than the insurance industry. The insurance industry is still very exclusive. And if we want more diversity, not just in the people, but also in the offerings to the public, then we have to take a bigger stand and make sure people know who we are as the industry versus the insurance industry. And then as for us as individuals, you know, I've done enough of explaining race, being a foreigner, being LGBTQ, you know, you can look it up. There's movies, there's Netflix. Like, I don't have the time or the patience for that anymore. Again, different person from 2020. As a matter of fact, I will tell you, I won't. I've absolutely refused. I will engage briefly a conversation, but it's not my place to do that. And as far as we're concerned, I think we have to be willing to go the extra mile for diversity and inclusion. And so that means being vocal when we see things that are not diverse and inclusive. It means that, you know, the people that are ordinarily kind of like, doesn't have anything to do with me. It's time for those people to say stuff. You know, there's a portion of this country who is willing to go the extra mile to make sure this country isn't diverse and inclusive. So we have to ask ourselves, you know, who wants it more? And I'm going to end on that.
Well, Emma, thank you. You just gave me my charge. So thank you very much. Mission accepted. Well, thank you all panelists. We did get through our robust questions today, and I really appreciate it. Kristen and Keith, do we have any questions from the audience that we're going to address in these last few minutes?
Actually, we didn't see any come through unless someone, but I actually had a question, and I think Keith actually did as well, kind of similarly related. What does the panel think technology's role, if there is one, would be in helping to create a more inclusive profession? Maybe either on the planner side, employee side, or on the client side.
I think technology plays a great role, a very positive one. I've seen it with the BLX industry program, because I remember like growing up, there was no RIA or financial planner growing up in New York City in Washington Heights. It was like a bodega, liquor store, a bank, check cash in place, and a funeral home, right? A lot of transactional stuff. So now with technology, we have interns that are being able to have a meaningful relationship with a firm and a job, even though they're not physically located in the same place. And the same goes for the clients as well. Now we can work with clients that are all over the country. They don't have to travel to your own RIA, the big fancy office downtown, right? So it goes both ways, but it could be a huge asset without a doubt.
I agree. I think technology helps expand awareness and access. If you're in a part of the country and you really want to work with an LGBTQ advisor who gets you, you don't have to just work with anybody. You can work with your advisor of choice. And I think that's really positive for our profession and for the advisor and for the client. So win, 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 triple win.
I think the pandemic has definitely sped that up last year when we didn't have a choice. And then once we reached out across the country, we saw that it worked. And so to your point, Rita, we're not limited to our geographies. If we meet someone that we resonate with and meets our needs, we can work with them remotely through technology.
I think to Emma's point earlier too, I think from the other perspective, it's technology is helping a lot of advisors that want to break away and start their own businesses and focus on specific, niches to do that. 20 years ago, I'm not so sure that would have been so easy, but with technology, I think it's definitely making it more accessible and an option for more people. And so I think that naturally is going to, to Emma's point, help as well.
Keith, did you have a question you want to put before these last couple minutes?
You're muted. Oh, Keith, you were muted on your question.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, it was just something related to technology, I guess, is how the impact of, this trending remote working environment. How is that, the impact of that in diversity and inclusion? Because I guess it's just kind of like less interaction, but just was curious on your thoughts. But I guess it's really similar to technology. So I think most of it is answered.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, with a minute to spare, I will turn it back to Kristen if there's not any other questions from the audience.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. I think Keith is going to have some closing remarks, but I'll also put this out there. I'm going to speak on behalf of Donna Trainer, our pro bono director, that technology really has helped us as a chapter to reach out and be able to help many, many, many more people this year and last year than we ever had if you combine all of our previous years as a chapter. So, so I'll just add that little 2 cents in there on that as well. So with that said, I'm just amazed and just so thankful to be able to be in the presence of all of you guys. And I'll be connecting with you on LinkedIn if I'm not already. So thank you very much. I'd love to follow everything you're doing, support everything that you're doing, promote everything that you all are doing. And that's part of it, right? We've got to do that. Make sure that we're doing that. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. Keith?
Okay, yeah. So I'd like to close with this. There's a book called The Journey Beyond Fear by John Hagel. And among 3 pillars of success, according to this book, is passion. And the author kind of calls it uniquely the passion of the explorer. And it is described as actively looking to connect with others when addressing new challenges to achieve greater impact. And I believe discussions like this and connections like this certainly gives us something we can look forward to in the future. And by the way, on the top of the chat box, Luis shared his LinkedIn profile, and I'm sure everyone here is open to making connections. And with that said, we truly appreciate everyone for showing their passion today, and thank you for what you do for your clients and for our profession. Have a good rest of the evening, and we hope to see you again soon.